Inside Boxing Daily on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. Inside Boxing Daily is brought to you by, as always, BetNow.eu. To get a 50% cashback bonus on your first deposit up to $1,000, make sure you go to BetNow.eu, use the promo code TRUTH50, or you can go to the GruelingTruth.com page, click on the banner at the top of the page, and use TRUTH50. Also, the Retired Boxers Foundation with Jackie Richardson and Alex Ramos. I am your host tonight, co-host, Mike Goodpaster, and I want to introduce my co-host, Jeremiah Preisser. How you doing, Jeremiah?
I'm good, man. Let's get this thing going. It's been a while.
Yeah, we were on vacation last week. Me and Jeremiah went to the Bahamas. That was fun, wasn't it, Jeremiah?
Yeah, so don't hold it against us that we left you out in the dark with your boxing news, okay? We had better things to do.
Yeah. We was chilling. All right, so it seems like the big news is will Ruiz and Joshua 2 happen? Now, Eddie Hearn says this could change boxing, Jeremiah. Eddie Hearn insists that Andy Ruiz has signed for the rematch against Anthony Joshua, which will take place in Saudi Arabia, the land of the free, home of the brave. No, wait, that's here. On December the 7th. My problem is this. Why Saudi Arabia? If you're doing this for the crowd, why wouldn't you do it in London or Mexico or Las Vegas or New York? This seems stupid to me. Plus, I'm not going to stay up till 4:30 in the morning to watch a fight.
No, I sure as hell ain't are. I mean, it's a money thing. I mean, that's all it is. I mean, this isn't about making the most of the fan experience. I mean, hell, remember when I don't know if you saw any of the Amira Khan exhibition against Billy Dibb.
No, I didn't.
But if you watched, yeah, well, if you watched any of that, you could tell that these guys are not regular fans. I mean, they kind of look like they didn't know what the hell was going on at times. I mean, again, you could just see that there's virtually no experience in Saudi Arabia with boxing. Makes some sense. But I mean, this is all a money thing. That's all it is. Some big time, I don't know who the hell it is, but some guy with a lot of money or a few people with a lot of money, they just wanted to stage an event. I mean, they've got all that oil money to burn, and they figured it'd be a big thing to put on, a heavyweight fight of this magnitude in Saudi Arabia. I mean, I don't like it. I mean, some of the objections, actually a lot of objections have been raised. You kind of hinted at it, jokingly when you call it the, land of the free, home of the brave. I mean, a lot of people have been stirring up a fuss. Even, Amnesty International, who was like, hey, you guys probably shouldn't do it. But I don't know. I don't think Eddie Hearn is going to change his mind. I mean, I definitely understand some of the concerns.
With Ali and Foreman, which was held in a place where a month beforehand they were executing people for what they believed.
Right. Yeah. I mean, Zimbabwe was Zaire. Sorry, but yeah. Zaire was not a pretty place back then. I don't remember there being a whole lot of calls to disband the fight. Maybe there was some, but again, I do understand the fans who are railing against this precisely because Saudi Arabia doesn't have a good human rights record. I mean, they got religious people telling women to cover up, and women can barely drive or do anything without a man.
Yes, and that's not right to tell women to cover up, Jeremiah. It should be the opposite.
Right. Yeah. No. You gotta let him.
You gotta let him
be
know
free,
what he's
man.
getting himself into if he hits on a girl.
Exactly. I mean, I'm all for test driving the car before you buy it.
All right. Now we can't really rail against Eddie Hearn and his, but this is the thing. All right. Eddie Hearn said this: for me, this event can change boxing forever because if Saudi Arabia are going to invest in these type of fights. With the population they have, you could be seeing a big change in the dynamics of the sport, and that is something that really, truly excites me. Now, what we just talked about, Hearn dismissed suggestions that women would not be allowed to attend the event, saying that anyone who bought a ticket online would automatically be granted a 30-day visa into the country. Right there. How can you dismiss suggestions when you have to say that if you buy a ticket, you'll be granted a 30-day visa. If you stay 31, they're probably going to behead you for being a woman and going to the fight.
Yeah, you might have a little, you might run into a little trouble if you overstay your visa. But I think he's just doing it just because even if you get a 30-day visa, a lot of these people are just staying for the fight and then they're going home anyways. I mean, these people aren't stupid. They know what the hell's going on in Saudi Arabia and places near
Yeah,
it.
because
So
they haven't said a woman that is of Saudi descent that lives in Saudi Arabia would not be allowed to go to this fight then, correct? Because you got to have a visa to get into the country to go to the fight.
yeah. Well, I mean, Eddie Hearn's a promoter. He's going to promote. I mean, it doesn't surprise me. I mean, I'm just not surprised by any of it. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if there's some Saudi women who are ringside, but of course, it seems to me they're probably going to be accompanied by men. But again, it's one of those things. Here's the thing is, Eddie Hearn is a promoter, and I understand all the human rights things surrounding it as well. But let's I mean, put things into perspective as well. And in no way am I trying to justify what's going on. But we've got Donald Trump and much of the West shaking hands with the Saudis, investing loads of money into
But
them,
we
giving
always
them
have,
arms.
and it's not because we invest money into them; it's because they invested to us. Do you know that Saudi Arabia actually owns about 10% of the U.S. stock market? That's how much money they have invested in us. That's why we've always been in bed with Saudi Arabia.
Well, part of the reason we're in bed with Saudi Arabia is because, again, we're getting into foreign policy here, but hey, fuck it, right? But I mean, Saudi Arabia has been friendly to us. I mean, because in the Middle East, you have three big power players. Well, I mean, four if you count Israel. But in terms of Muslim-dominated countries, you have Saudi Arabia, you have Turkey, and you have Iran. And a lot of them, it's a big power play in the Middle East, and Saudi Arabia has allowed us to put bases there and arms and all sorts of other stuff. So Saudi Arabia has been kind enough to let us project our power in the Middle East, and that's part of it too. I mean, that's why a lot of these guys again are shaking hands with the kings and the royal family and places and people like that. So I'm not making a huge deal about it. I don't like it. I mean, I would prefer the place that's much more fan friendly, like the UK or Mexico or somewhere, like New York City. But I just don't think Eddie Hearn is going to back off, and I think this is what we're going to get.
Yeah, and we shouldn't get it, and I think it's BS. But it also tells you what Eddie Hearn is. He's a promoter, which is another word for scumbag.
Yep.
It just is.
Yeah.
I mean, how many promoters
you're right. I mean,
haven't been scumbags? There's a few. I think J. Russell Peltz is pretty good. But he also does smaller shows now because he didn't sell his soul to do the other stuff, I think.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you always get the good guys sprinkled in, but they just get drowned out by the system. I mean, this is why I mean, it's the same way in the political arena. Some guys genuinely want to change the system, but when you start shaking hands with guys who you used to work with and now they're lobbyists and, there's just a bunch of kickbacks involved and your family can be a lot better off. I mean, I understand, but it sucks, man. I wish there were more good guys, but this is why the sport is in the shape that it is.
Yeah, let's get to it. Also, a 1 to 1:30 start in California means like 4:30 for me. I can't do that, Jeremiah.
Oh, hell no. I mean, dude, that's but I guess if we do stay up that late, I guess we kind of understand the pain that a lot of the UK guys go through when they're watching our stuff.
We really don't, because we're more important than they are, because we whipped their ass at 1776. I thought 1776 that the big thing that we won was the right to have boxing matches in prime time, while they had to watch them at 4 in the morning.
Exactly. It was written in the fine print in the Declaration of Independence. It was like, hey, also.
But yeah, I mean,
also,
you make most of your money from this country. Maybe not in this case, because, well, it'd be DAZN. It wouldn't be pay-per-view, correct?
Right, correct.
Or do you think maybe they'll pop up DAZN's pay-per-view channel now?
Nah, I think it's going to be. Well, I actually think Eddie Hearn and DAZN are. I think they're quite happy about the deal because of the money back in it. I mean, see, the thing is, instead of staging a pay-per-view, they just get a bunch of extra money for putting the fight on in Saudi Arabia. I mean, it's kind of a win-win for them. I mean, because again, this is it's a money game. They're getting more money than they would have gotten elsewhere. And DAZN is probably getting in on the profits as well. So it makes some sense, but it really does suck that it's going to be so early in the morning. I mean, if it's 4:30 for you, it's 2:30 for me. I may stay up and watch it. I'm not exactly sure.
Oh, hell, you know what? I'll probably fall asleep, set my alarm, and wake up at 4:30. I'm not bullshitting anybody.
Oh, okay. All right. I thought you were serious. But yeah, I mean, I might stay up for that and have a peek. I don't know. I'm kind of interested to see.
Hey, we got a comment from Mario who says, "Hearn, remember people are smarter than you think. Eat shit from East LA."
All right. Well, eat shit, Eddie Hearn. I mean, he does. Yeah, well, all right. I like comments like that, but no, it's one of the. I mean, it sucks. I mean, there's a lot to dislike about it, but again, it's Eddie Hearn, and there's a lot of money, and I can't be mad in that sense. Again, you're just getting more money than you would elsewhere. I don't like it. It's not for the fans.
Yeah. So actually, I heard Ruiz's trainer today saying Andy has not spoke on it yet, but Eddie says that Andy's already signed the contract.
Yeah, I know there seems to be a lot of conflict in regard to that. Now, to me, there seems to be a lot going on just in terms of the whole situation. I mean, Andy Ruiz has talked a lot about how he wasn't going to sign it, how he should get more money, and all sorts of other stuff. And now it's come down to this, where Ruiz is saying that he hasn't signed the contract, and I'm not exactly sure what's going on. I mean, I've heard from guys who are more in the know and rubbing elbows with some of the insiders that Andy Ruiz is just pushing Eddie Hearn's buttons intentionally, trying to see what he can get away with legally. And I mean, personally, I just get tired of all the ups and downs and all this other nonsense. I just want to see the fight. I mean, I feel for Andy Ruiz in a sense because now he's the guy who holds the belts, and he wants more money because of it. And I understand, but I also understand that he came in as a substitute for Jarrell Miller. He signed the contract. Most people didn't think he had a chance, and he's much better off now than he would have been had he not got this. Had he not been the substitute. So I just don't want to make a whole big deal about it. If just go out there and win. I mean, if he wins, he can go fight Deontay Wilder in L.A. or New York or something and get a lot bigger money, because he's going to get bigger money from here on out regardless. I mean, he's got a bigger fan base now. I mean, the Mexicans and Americans are more in tune to who he is and what he's capable of, and I don't expect for him to get blown out and around by Anthony Joshua. So he makes more money because of this in the long term.
All right. Wiley from Colorado says it's going to be hot out there. So is it the best place for a boxer like Joshua who has stamina issues to fight at?
Yeah, that is interesting, right? It's going to be interesting to see when exactly they move their training camp to Saudi Arabia, but I don't know. I mean, if this is like some big air-conditioned stadium or arena, I don't think it's going to be
an outdoor arena.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, that is what I heard. It's supposed to seat 12,000 people. They're probably building it special.
Yeah, that is interesting. It's not often that you get outdoor fights, especially for fights of this magnitude, in something like that. I mean, yeah, I think it could be an issue. I don't know if I'm sure you guys, everybody listening here, I'm sure you guys have all seen that picture of Anthony Joshua, and I don't know if it's real, but it looks like he's lost muscle tone, and he's shooting for something smaller and slimmer, and actually something that will probably be better for his stamina. So I'm going to look and see and wait. I'm going to wait until it gets about fight time, see how they weigh in, what they look like, and then I'm going to make that judgment. I mean, I perfectly understand the question. It makes sense, but I just want to see how they try and adapt to it before I pass any final judgment.
All right. Pitbull says, let's all take a deep breath and relax. The heavyweight champion of the world hasn't spoken yet. Everyone just shut the hell up while we wait for the king from Mexico to speak. All hail the champ, Andy Ruiz.
All right. Well,
I would like to
mean,
bring up this.
yeah.
I mean, if he comes in the same way he was last time, would he technically be allowed to fight in Saudi Arabia? Because with the size of the boobs he's got, wouldn't they make him cover him up?
Yeah, they might, right? They might censor his nipples for the telecast.
Yeah, he can wear little pasties and a veil. But
yeah. They have little tassels on the nipple part. Yeah, that'd be cool.
So, is there any?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say that, man, if you like Andy Ruiz, I understand. I mean, he's a feel-good story, but, to me, when you call him the champion, I mean, really, there is no real champion, in my opinion. I mean, these guys still have to sort it out amongst themselves before I start declaring somebody the man in the division. You got Tyson Fury saying he's the Laniel. You got these guys fighting over the other belts, and then you got Deontay Wilder with his single trinket. Hashing it out. I mean, these guys need to be hashing out amongst each other, but it looks like soon we'll get some clarity.
All right, World Boxing Super Series, a fight that will happen, it looks like, on December 14th for the Cruiserweight Championship. Breedis will take on Dorticos. This is a good fight, Jeremiah.
Yeah, I like it. I like it for sure. I mean, it's a good. I have to say that it's a good substitute for what we got in the last tournament. I mean, I was of the opinion that it wasn't really worthwhile. I mean, you just have some of the same guys hashing it out, trying to figure out who the new king is going to be. Because the interesting thing about this, and it's rare that you get this sort of turnaround time for these things, but Usyk, once he becomes a heavyweight, which is before this this finale takes part, I mean, you'll have Alexander Usyk no longer being the cruiserweight champion of the world. I mean, he's the man still until he enters the ring against Takam and abdicates his titles. And so once that happens, this finale will actually indicate who the next real cruiserweight champion of the world is. I mean, I find it interesting just because, again, you don't get a turnaround time like that, but this is a good styles matchup. I mean, we saw Dorticos against Gassiev. It was a damn good fight, one of the better fights of the year. And then you've got Breidis, who I think is still the betting favorite, and I think was going in. He fought Alexander Usyk real close. So to me, this is a damn good styles matchup. I like the fact that they both have good power. I mean, we've seen what Breidis is capable of. I mean, the last fight wasn't, a lot of us weren't happy with the way it turned out, but the fact remains is that the dude really has power. We've brought it up multiple times on this show, but he knocked Manuel Char cold with an uppercut. So this is a guy who can definitely carry his punch a division north, and Dorticos himself has good size, good jab, good technique, good power, is a rock solid body puncher. To me, Breidis is the better rounded fighter, and because I think Breidis is also slightly tougher, so I'm favoring him going into this fight. But it's good. I mean, good for the tournament. Again, I wasn't all for it initially, but it's turned out just fine. I mean, you've had some exciting fights here and there, and now you get a conclusive champion.
Yeah, but the 140-pound title sucks. Because that was the fight I was probably most looking forward to all year with Josh Taylor and Regis Prograis. And with that, Robert from the UK has a question. He says, I believe that Prograis pulled out of the fight because he's afraid of Taylor.
Well, you know what I have to say that I found pretty damn funny is that Regis Prograis, right, they've pulled out. I don't think they're all the way out. I think the head is still in, but
I got an extra kid like that. Go ahead.
Yeah, I hear you. I've got a few of them run around. I don't even know half their names, but
you only know half their mom's names.
Yeah, exactly. A long time ago. It was
like
rough.
You would be Jeremiah.
The real deal,
Holyfield.
baby.
Yeah.
Yeah, the real deal. That's how I got my nickname. It wasn't fighting. It was, But, no, Prograis. So here's the thing is, this is what I heard, and I'm I find it funny because a bunch of the guys from the United Kingdom have been trolling Regis Prograis. Like I saw him on Twitter today, and he said, what did he say? Keep y'all talking. And a bunch of guys from the UK were sitting there trolling him, like putting Josh Taylor gifs on his page and, was telling him to stop being scared, stop being a pussy, a bunch of stuff. I mean, Prograis seems like a pretty cool dude, but it was just funny to see so many guys trolling him over this whole situation. And the thing that I'm still slightly hopeful for is I think there was a press release today saying that who was it? I think it was from the people who run the WBSS. I forget what the name is, but they said, or somebody else said, that they are reaching out to Prograis and his people to see if something can be worked out to try and calm the situation. And I'm really, really hoping that something is resolved and they can get this deal made, because that was one of the fights that I really wanted to see for the year. I don't think either one of these guys is scared. I don't know exactly what's going on behind the scenes. I mean, this isn't the first guy. Prograis is not the first guy to threaten to pull out of the tournament because of monetary issues. So I don't know if there's actually something, but it does kind of seem like they're all Lou DiBella guys who are doing this as well. But anyways, I don't want to make too much about this. I just want to see the fight get done. I mean, this is one of the better fights to be made the entire year. This year really hasn't been that good. I mean, there's been some solid upsets and a few solid fights here and there. Again, there's been some pleasantries, but overall, it just hasn't been a strong year. And we thought it might be because last year wasn't a great year, but the year before it was rock solid. So I just want to see it get made. Taylor versus Prograis is excellent. That's for the it might be for the 140-pound championship, but it's a damn good fight. I just want it to get done.
All right, we have two-time Cuban Olympic gold medalist Rosie Ramirez is now 0-1. Shockingly lost his pro debut to featherweight Aiden Gonzalez, who was 5-2-2 by a 4-round split decision last Saturday night on ESPN in Philadelphia. What was your take on the fight?
Well, this is actually kind of a hometown pride thing for me, actually, because Aden is from Denver. He trains in Denver. He trains with former, 140-pounder. I wouldn't call him a contender. He was close to a fringe contender, Donald Camarena. This is a guy when I was growing up who I would watch a little bit. I actually went to the gym with him and trained with him for a little while, but that was in my early teenage years when he was doing his training. And he like pretty good southpaw, pretty slick, pretty tough. But yeah, he became a trainer afterwards, and this is one of his guys. And I was pretty surprised. I mean, you think of a two-time Olympian, and you're like, man, this guy's got serious skills. There he comes in and he gets clipped with a kind of just an odd straight left hand and gets put down. I mean, the punch to me didn't look that powerful, but maybe it was just a balance thing and his timing. I mean, it was a pretty good shot. But this guy just worked hard. He banged to the body a lot. He wasn't intimidated at all. I mean, I thought it was a damn good performance by the underdog. Ramirez, to me, he looked shocked when he got knocked out. I mean, I remember looking at him at the beginning of the second round, and he just looked like he was thinking quite a bit. Like maybe the stage had gotten to him or something. Like maybe he was having flashes of that, that big top rank contract being flushed down the toilet. I mean, because like Timothy Bradley said when he was commentating, he said, in a 4-round fight, if you get knocked down, you got to win every other round convincingly. And Ramirez, to me, looked as if he, like when he got knocked down, he looked like he wanted to fight. And that's a good trait too. I mean, I like guys who don't get intimidated after they get knocked down, but he just didn't look like he was confident in setting a torrid pace. Maybe that's all those amateur fights that he's been in and he's used to getting his way. But the Coloradoan was just right there, banging with the body constantly, fighting back. And it looked to me as if Ramirez was starting to get his groove in the 4th round. I mean, I thought he took that round. He looked a bit sharper with his counter punches, but he didn't throw a jab consistently at all. I mean, for a tall guy like that, That just doesn't make any
Well,
sense.
how
And for
about
somebody,
this? What I saw, what I watched, 'cause I watched it today too. I didn't watch it when it was live, but it looks to me like at 126, he looks too heavy compared to what he looked like in the Olympics. I think this. I think he lacks power. Work rate's not great. Chin's not great. I would say maybe consider get that weight down to 118 or 112 if I'm top ranked to have a chance here.
yeah, I agree. I think I don't know if this was Top Rank's idea. I don't know if they were like, hey, we're going to have you beat some guys and then you're going to fight Shakur Stevenson at 122. And, that's the plan. And it initially, hearing it, we are like, oh, okay, that sounds fine. That is a good plan. But he does not look tight at that weight. He looked soft. He didn't look that quick. He didn't look as well schooled as you would think a guy of his caliber should be. But yeah, I definitely think there's some issues. I'm not sure if he has a bad chin, because he didn't really look rocked or anything after that. But I don't think Gonzalez is a big puncher. But yeah, man, I think they got to get him down. They got to work on the fundamentals, get down to the basics, and teach this guy how to fight in the professionals. I mean, I'm not discounting his chances of being a good fighter altogether because, again, if he gets down to 118, he's going to be even bigger. He's going to be even quicker. He's going to hit a little harder, but there's still some serious concerns there. I mean, if he doesn't learn how to jab consistently, if he doesn't, pick up the pace a little bit, another thing too is his defense has to be a little bit tighter. I didn't think it was as bad as Timothy Bradley was saying. He kept talking about how he was walking in and out in straight lines and he wasn't moving his head. I didn't see that. There were times when he was going back in straight lines, but he did move his head pretty well. But there's some good concern there, and it was pretty shocking because Top Rank has been doing this for a long time, and you're like, well, if they know, if anybody knows how to match guys, it's them, and they. Didn't get it right this time.
All right, Humberto says he won the fight, always discriminating on the Cubans.
Who's always discriminating against Cuban?
I guess he's talking about the people that judge the fight, I would assume.
Well, I mean, if you're a two-time Olympian, I mean, I don't think it's discrimination to, say that he's got a lot of work to do. I mean, and to be honest with you, the Cubans really haven't, by and large, they haven't panned out that well in the professional game. I mean,
Ever.
Sure
we talked about that. The one
right.
that stands out to me is Jorge Luis Gonzalez, the heavyweight that was supposed to be like the next Teofimo Stevenson, and he gets to the pros, and everybody that's any good just beat his ass, and he had that stupid ponytail with a bald head, dumb shit. And we had this conversation before we came on air. The Ukrainians in the last 5 years have done more than the Cubans have since 1970 professionally.
Yeah, and again, I'm not as familiar with all the guys who have defected, in that time. But you look at the two Ukrainian Olympic teams in 2008 and 2012. I mean, they just seem to have adjusted better. I mean, the amateur system it's almost like a Cuban game because these guys, by and large, don't go pro, and they get to. So a lot of them are far more experienced than our guys. So, I mean, you've got guys who I wouldn't call them professionals, but they're much more seasoned, beating our guys. And, a lot of these guys are taught how to box well and move well. And look at their success just in the Pan Am Games not too long ago. I mean, they were dominant. I mean, they've always been a fantastic force in the Olympic Games. But, you bring up Gonzalez, there was the other Cuban heavyweight, Landir Solis, who Vladimir Klitschko had hardly any issues with. And in fact, Solis just kind of came forward and jabbed and didn't do a whole lot at all. The Bartholomews, I think one of them lost. There's 3 Bartholomew brothers, yeah. And one of the more prospect ones lost recently. Rances Bartholomew. Actually, a lot of people thought he was going to be better than he turned out to be because he had real good size. I mean, he was real tall for 130, 135.
Erislandy Laura, which I know you brought up before, and the one I would bring up is Joel Casamayor. Who else? Because if you look, the Cubans have a great boxing tradition. I mean, if you look at it, Florentino Fernandez, Great fighter, probably the biggest puncher that the Cubans ever produced professionally. Benny Kid Paret, of course, who died tragically against Emil Griffith. Kid Ternera. The thing is this, when I go through the 10, Jose Legras, Sugar Ramos, Luis Rodriguez, who else do we have? Jose Napoles would have to be there. Kid Gavilan, of course. Kid Chocolate. The thing is, the 10 guys I just named were probably the 10 best Cuban fighters that I've ever seen. And the only one that fought after Castro took power as a professional that made this list that I just came up with off the top of my head, I may be completely wrong, but is Joel Casamayor.
Yeah, I mean, Casamayor to me seemed to adapt to the more physical nature of boxing more than any of them. I mean, Lara has shown that he's adjusted pretty well to it. I mean, and a lot of people gave him crap because he was a boxer mover and stuck a lot to straight punches, but he's shown with the Jarrett Hurd and his most Castano fight, he's shown that he can get scrappy. If things get chippy, he doesn't bow out. So I think Lara has done pretty damn well. Joel Casamayor I thought was a damn good fighter. I mean, he was arguably unbeaten in his prime. I mean, you could have given him the Freitas fight and the Castillo fight.
He won the Freitas fight and the Castillo fight, I think.
Yeah, I did. I haven't seen the Freitas fight since it actually happened, but the Castillo fight I did edge him in, and so and he became the 135-pound champion. And actually, if you look at his fight against
to beat Michael Katsidius.
Yes.
Yeah. I like Michael. He was a tough dude.
Oh hell, I would have loved to seen him against Gotti at 135. Oh my god, but oh geez, dude, that would have been a barn burner, man. And actually, credit to Art Maurer. I brought that fight up before and just throwing it out there as a hypothetical. But I saw Art Maurer throw it out today. The prospect of that would have been fantastic. But Casamayor was also given Juan Manuel Marquez a hell of a time. And this was a guy who was definitely past his prime. I think he was 36, 37 by that point, and he was still the lightweight champion of the world. I mean, I think at his prime, I think he beats Marquez. But, yeah, like you said, there's not a whole lot of guys who have really turned out to be that good from the Cuban amateur ranks. I think Guillermo Rigondeaux might have proven to be a great fighter had he gotten the fights that he wanted. I mean, for instance, if at 122 he would have gotten Carl Frampton and Leo Santa Cruz, I think he would have beaten both of those guys, and I think we'd see him in a different light. So to me, Rigondeaux is one of those guys who could have been great, and I think in an 8-division setup, if he was fighting at 118 or 126, I think he would have had a nice little legacy for himself too. But who else? Juan Carlos Gomez turned out to be a pretty damn good fighter. If you remember him, he was the guy who he did use PEDs. That was the guy who beat up Denis Lebedev.
Yeah. How about Kid Ternero?
Yeah, right.
Because he had wins over Ezzard Charles and Holman Williams, if I remember right. And Holman Williams is a dude that people sleep on, but Holman Williams is a guy that may make it hard to say Roy Jones Jr. was the greatest fighter from Pensacola, Florida, because Holman Williams could flat out fight.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you, we talked about this off air too, but Holman Williams tied his series with Charlie Burley. Burley was the only one who scored a stoppage, but I mean, he tied their series. I mean, and people constantly rave about Charlie Burley. So, I mean, that tells you how damn good Holman Williams really was.
And it tells you how good Ternero was to Cuban, because he had
exactly
Williams and Charles, and I think he also beat Marcel Thill in their first meeting. I think he lost the rematch, though.
Yeah, he's one of the actually, I got to give credit to another guy that I know, and Jose Corpez, who wrote a book on Al Brown. He pointed out to me that Kid was one of the better guys to never win a title. And he was actually surprised that Buddy Gibbs put Jose Basora on the list. But yeah, he's a really good shout too. Let's see.
What about Jose
see if I can remember.
Was his last name LeGras? But they called him Pocket Clay, and he won like 54 straight fights between 1965 and 69. And I think the losses that were sandwiched were like to future world champ. What was his name? Howard Winstone. And he lost a close fight in '69 that broke the 54 straight wins against Johnny. What the hell was his last name? Famichan? Was that his last name?
Yep, that's right.
Yeah, and I mean he was a hell of a fighter also, and I think he also stopped Clemente Sanchez for the title in the 10th rounds. But then of course I think Edward Joffrey beat his ass. But that was another guy that was a hell of a fighter that people don't remember.
Yeah, man, and that's the thing is, the Cubans just as much success, but the problem is that these are older guys. I mean,
Florentino Fernandez. Florentino Fernandez was a big time puncher.
Oh, huge puncher.
Yeah,
he was the guy who fought.
He fought Emil Griffith. Gaspar Ortega.
Yeah, didn't he fight? Oh God, who had the movie about him? I don't know why the hell I can't think of his name right now. But the guy who had a movie.
Carter. The only thing about that was Hurricane Carter actually destroyed him.
Yeah, he did. No, that was a scary knockout.
Yeah, and he also beat a young Jose Torres, I believe. So
okay.
And then of course he lost to all the great fighters he fought, basically. To Dick Tigers, Emil Griffith. I think he lost to Joey Giambra, who was a damn good fighter that I think gets underrated. But the win over Torres, Florentine Fernandez was a damn good fighter. I think he beat Gaspar Ortega twice, and I think he beat Ralph Dupas too, if I remember right.
Yeah, he was ranked in the top 10 for half a decade or so. I can't quite remember. But yeah, he was a rock solid fighter. But like we're talking about, a lot of these, they're just not modern guys. I mean, when you look at the best of the bunch today, it's like Rigondeaux, it's Casamayor if we're talking recently, Barthélemy. I'm trying to think. Richard Abril, the guy who should have gotten the decision against Brandon Rios down at 135. He was a pretty slick guy, pretty amateur in his style, where he would touch you and then get out of the way. He was a good fighter. Let's see, Gamboa. I think Gamboa is unfortunate because.
I better talk about old Cubans.
Yeah, I mean that's fine. I just thought we were.
How about Sugar Ramos?
Yeah,
I know, but I don't care about guys from the last 20 years. You know that. Sugar Ramos was a hell of a fighter. Killed the original Davey Moore, which was a hell of a fight. And I think he lost the title to Vincent Salvador, who was a great fighter also.
Oh yeah, big time underrated. So, yeah, Salvador was awesome. I mean, he gets overlooked consistently. I'm not sure why, but he had a long reign. He was active. He had good power. I mean, he went to the body, went to the head. I mean, that's one of those guys that I'm just not quite sure. I don't know if he just didn't have the personality, or maybe it's because the era that he came up in. I'm not exactly sure. I mean, maybe he was just overshadowed by guys like Ruben Olivares. I know Mando Ramos was very popular. In fact, but he was Mexican, so we're talking about Cubans. But yeah, the guy just gets overrated. Underrated. But yeah, I don't know. I just don't think that these guys are panning out. The old Cubans were another old Cuban that gets underrated, or almost completely ignored. Actually, is a guy like Black Bill, who was a stablemate of Kid Gavlin, and he's not. He's a name you hardly ever hear, but this is a guy who was in the flyweight tournament with Midget Walgast, and he was not a favorite going in. I think he was looked at about the third best guy in there, and they had Eugene Hout, the Frenchman, as the number one guy. But this is a guy who beat tons and tons of. Actually, he was a favorite going into the Midget Walgast fight in the New York State Athletic Commission's tournament to crown a champion in their state. But I mean, this is a guy who beat a lot of guys. Like he beat Corporal Izzy Schwartz, who used to be the Ring Magazine champion. Who else did he beat? Pinky Silverberg, who I think used to be.
He fought like 170 times or something, didn't he? And he won like 130 of them, something like that. So he fought everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, he beat Wee Willie Davies, who's really underrated. Johnny McCoy, who had a lot. I mean, he beat a ton of good guys, and actually he was stylistically, he was compared to like Jackie Kid Berg and Harry Greb and guys like that. But yeah, I mean, he was an excellent fighter, same stable as damn it, Kid Chocolate. Yeah, but damn good fighter who gets undervalued.
There's a lot of those. It
Ton of
seems
them.
like most of the Cubans that I would think of were probably undervalued. Probably because they don't speak English. I mean, I don't know what else it could be, but Luis Rodriguez was a hell of a fighter.
Right, yeah. I mean, Luis Rodriguez was in a bunch of tight ones. And in fact, I got to give credit to another guy, same guy actually, Jose Corpus, who told me that, what did he say today? Damn it, I'd have to go on social media and look. But he said that, oh, hell, you know what? I'm gonna have to get back to that. I gotta go.
Rodriguez is the guy that beat the hell out of Hurricane Tartar twice, if I remember right. He beat Georgie Benton, which people always talk about, you know, how great he was. I think he was 2-0 against Benny Briscoe too.
Yeah, that might have been the guy. That might have been the guy that I'm talking about.
Luis Rodriguez.
Well, no, I think Briscoe might have told. What was it that again? I'm gonna have to look here.
Well, I saw a
we'll have to go over
Briscoe a long time ago that Briscoe thought Rodriguez was the best fighter he ever fought, and he fought Monzon and Hagler.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what. Trying to find it here, but I think that's exactly what we're talking about. Yeah. Okay, so here we go. Said Benny Briscoe about 25 years ago told me Eddie Gregory or Luis Rodriguez were the best he ever fought. And I guess Emil Griffith once told me Monzon might have been the toughest guy he fought. Well, he said he could have beaten Monzon if he was a little bit taller. Anyways, yeah, it looks like Briscoe thought that Rodriguez was a hell of a fighter. And like you said, this was a guy who fought tons of talented guys. I mean,
mainly he fought Monzon and Hagler.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, and for him to fight Monzon and Hagler, and for him to say, "Hey, you know, Rodriguez was the best guy that I ever fought," is pretty impressive. But I mean, this is a guy who was, you know, a champion, you know, slick. I mean, it could do just about everything.
How about Jose Napoles? I think he'd have to be your top 2 or 3. He was a great welterweight that I think gets undervalued big time.
Yeah, I do think the historians give him proper credit because, you know, they know what it was like, but he just didn't fight.
I'm talking about regular boxing fans don't really know, because I think with him, it's kind of like the revisionist history with Michael Spinks when he gets knocked out in one round by Mike Tyson, and that seems to be what everybody remembers. With Napoles, everybody remembers him getting starched by Monzon in the 7th round, but he was a 147-pounder that had the balls to go up and fight a great middleweight.
Yeah, and this is also a guy didn't he start off as a lightweight too? I mean, imagine. I know
I think so, but I know that he dethroned Curtis Cokes, who was a hell of a fighter too.
Yeah, well, I think when I think of Napoles, I think of butter, you know, and it may sound goofy, but he was smooth as butter, man. I don't know, just the way he operated, like everything was just so smooth and in sync, and it didn't look herky-jerky. I mean, it just all looked like it almost looked like he was like dancing in a way. Like he just didn't look as if he was thinking, he was just doing. I mean, he was excellent. I mean, he was. I loved his defense in particular because he would move his head. He didn't have to put his hands up and block. He could just slip your punches and bang you out. I mean, definitely one of the greatest welterweights to ever do it. You know, good long reign as well. You know, had just about everything as well. I mean, yeah, I think he's got to be up there. You know, Kid Chocolate,
yeah,
Kid Gavlan. I mean,
Kid Gavlan and me would be the top 2.
Yeah, those are I think probably the greatest 3 or 4. Luis Rodriguez, those are probably the top 4.
Yeah, I think that's pretty easy because I think Chocolate, didn't he start off his career like 55-0-1 before his first loss, which I think was to Jack Kid Berg.
Yeah, and I think I know I've heard some, you know, crap about he was like 100-0 as an amateur too. I think Buddy Gibbs told me that that's just bullshit. They just said that. They just made it up. It was all kind of out of thin air. It sounds nice, right? I mean, to start off like 155 or something, amateur included. But Chocolate was the real deal. I mean, he was an excellent fighter as well. Fought tons of great guys. I mean, this is why it's hard.
The thing I remember reading about him was in his first 100 fights, he was like 94-6 or something insane. But all 6 losses were to International Boxing Hall of Famers. He lost to Berg twice. What was his name? LaBarbera? I think it was Fidel. He lost to him once.
Yeah.
I think he lost to Battalino once. And then, of course, he lost to Canzoneri twice. And from everything I've read, most of those fights were pretty damn close.
Yeah. Well, I know Chocolate had a draw in there, and then I think his first loss was a split decision to Berg, and then I think he lost in a unanimous to LaBarba. But I mean,
I've read about the Canzoneri fight, and I don't remember who wrote this, but I remember reading in like an old Boxing Illustrated in the 70s or something where the writer saw the fight and said that it was one of the greatest battles that he'd ever seen between Canzoneri and Chocolate.
Well, I'm looking at his record now, so I'm gonna go over some of these things. So, looks like he beat. He fought a bunch of like Bushy Graham, who I think's in the Hall of Fame. Beat him. Beat Fidel LaBarba in their first fight by majority decision. That's a Hall of Famer right there.
Al Singer was a damn good fighter.
Yeah, well, the thing about BoxRec now is they went back to the pages. You remember how it used to be where you had to click on multiple pages for the old-timers? That's how it is again. So lost to Jackie Kick Berg, Hall of Famer, lost to LaBarba, Hall of Famer, lost to Battalino, Hall of Famer, beat Benny Bass, Hall of Famer, lost split decision Canzoneri, Hall of Famer. Jesus, man, These guys didn't.
The big one that stuck out to me because he was 4-0 against him was Lou Feldman, and a lot of guys have never heard of Lou Feldman, but Lou Feldman was a man that defeated like 8 of the 12 world champions that he faced, and I think Feldman at one time or another was rated among the 10 best fighters at featherweight, junior lightweight, and lightweight.
Wow, that's pretty impressive. Well, I know Kid Chocolate.
And
damn,
also,
well,
he
yeah,
ended up being in Young Frankenstein, too. Oh, no, that was Marty Feldman. Go ahead.
Is that right? Well, hell. What's impressive about looking at this stuff is, who knows? I'd have to, go study the newspaper clippings to see how the first LaBarba fight went. But when you look at it, he lost in a split decision to Berg. Then he lost 2 unanimous decisions, but lost a split decision to Canzoneri. This is not a guy lost a split decision to Kid Berg. This is a guy who I'd have to study the newspaper clippings to see where he was at, but this is a guy who was really hanging with some of the greatest to ever do it. And you know how we are. We talk about context all the time. If he gets the win over Kid Berg and even one of those decisions against Canzoneri, where's he rank? Dude, it's just funny how, official decisions, skew one way or the other. Heavily at times.
And I'll tell you, I just found on Daily Motion the entire Canzoneri Berg fight, which that guy claimed was so great. I've never seen it, and I didn't even have the film of it, but I just shared it to you on Facebook.
Nice.
Maybe. It didn't post to Facebook yet, but I've shared it on my Facebook page, so if anybody wants to see the fight, just go find me at Mike Goodpaster on Facebook, and that fight is now posted if you want to see Kid Chocolate against Tony Canzoneri. The quality is not outstanding, but it is watchable. And then, of course, I think number 1 is Kid Gavilan. I remember reading about him when I was growing up, and the thing that's really screwy there is I think his final record was like 110 and 25 or 30, but I think that he went like 10 and 20 in his last 30 fights, which kind of skews the record there.
Yeah, and you get you get some modern day idiots who will bring that up and use it against them. Like, oh, well, look how many times he lost. It doesn't matter, man. It really doesn't. I mean, what happened to Kid Gavilan is almost the same thing that happens to just about every single fighter who's ever lived, especially ones who have made a living near the top level. I mean,
to get paid still.
Yeah, well, I mean, and think about it. It's, if you go to an employer and you're like, hey, my resume is I got punched in the face for 20 years and punched other guys in the face. I mean, how do those skills make you, how do they apply to other, arenas? I mean, does it make you a good, businessman or whatever? I mean, again, it's a tough thing. And not only that, look at the way these guys react when they retire. I mean, there's nothing as exciting as doing this. So that's why they hang on and hang on and hang on. And, because some of them have the name, they're given all these fights until they say no more. So, unfortunately, Gavilan was one of those guys, but, we're talking about,
well, how about
one of the best welterweights.
The thing that's the most impressive about Gavilan is he went 25 rounds with a prime Sugar Ray Robinson at his best weight, never went down or took a beating. In the first fight, from everything I read, there's a lot of people that thought Gavilan won. Now, the second fight, Robinson clearly won, but everything I read about that fight was that Robinson kept his distance from Gavilan.
Yeah. Yeah, it kind of reminded me of the what was it, the Billy Patrol Jimmy McLarnin rematch, where they were just going to stick to what they could do best, and the way they could do it, and was to box from the outside and get the job done. I mean, that's what it seemed like it was, and credit to Ray Robinson for being smart enough to recognize that and doing that. I mean, I suppose there was no need to get in Gavilan's wheelhouse, and especially when you can't knock the guy out. I mean, Gavilan had a fantastic chin and probably doesn't get enough credit for it, because in all of his fights, I mean, we're talking about what is it, 38? So we're talking about 143 fights. He was never knocked out. I mean, so, kudos to Ray.
Kudos quick, for all the Floyd Mayweather fans, Kid Gavilan beat Ike Williams twice, Bo Jack, Billy Graham, not the evangelist, but a hell of a fighter. He beat Carmen Basilio, Gaspar Ortega. I think he beat Tony Gennaro, Rocky Castellani, Johnny Bratton, who was a hell of a fighter, Gil Turner, Bobby Dykes, Ralph Tiger Jones, who was the third or fourth man to beat Ray Robinson, Chico Vera. I mean, this is a dude that beat everybody. And I think that I haven't done a welterweight list yet, but I mean, Kid Gavilan, I think, is easily, without breaking it down and looking at it, is a top 5 welterweight of all time.
Yeah, I think a lot of people feel that, because anybody who's familiar with the time period, it's like a lot of these guys that you were talking about. There's even more than that. I think you mentioned Ike Williams, Tommy Bell, who Ray Robinson fought for the welterweight championship. You said Billy Graham, I believe. Yeah. But there are also other guys like Gene Hairston. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's just tons and tons of guys here. Bobby Dykes, I think, was ranked. Edward Lau, I'm not even sure how you say it, but Eduardo Lausi.
Yeah, he also beat Laurent, what the hell, I don't know how to say his last name, but you know what I'm talking about. He was a damn good fighter. Dathol or something?
What was his name?
Laurent, was it Dathol? It's like Dauthuille. I think it was like that. I don't know. If I could spell it, I should be able to say it.
Yeah, well, Eduardo Lassi was in Argentina. Was a real good left hooker, and I think he was ranked in the top 3, I think, for a year or two. So we're talking about him not only beating middleweight contenders, but him also beating middleweight contenders as well. I mean, what a fighter! Of course, the thing about the top 5 is, again, I'm pretty open-minded with all that stuff. It's like. Yeah, I mean, he didn't have a long reign, but he fought a lot of damn good fighters, beat a ton of damn good fighters, and was competitive with the very best to ever do it. I mean, so long as you believe Ray Robinson's number 1. So, yeah, I think it's pretty damn hard not to put him up there, and especially when you count head-to-head, because I know some guys put a lot of emphasis on that. I'm not one of them, but it's like we're talking about a guy who can't be stopped.
Yeah, and
That's pretty.
the thing that separates him, that makes him the best Cuban to me, was he wasn't pretty like a Napoli's or a Kid Chocolate, but when you watch him fight, because was it the Billy Graham fight? Great fight if you can ever see that one. I got it on DVD here somewhere, but it's an absolute war. But I think the toughness he fought with was on another level. And, to me, sometimes no matter how skilled you are, the most important thing is how tough you are. And he proved that when he fought Sugar Ray Robinson, because I think I remember reading one time that Robinson said he landed the best right hand he ever threw on Gavilan. He thought he killed him with it, and he said it was like 2 seconds later Gavilan's countering him and firing back right away. So, I mean,
wow.
when you've got a guy like that saying those kind of things, it's hard to ignore that.
Yeah, it is. And like you said, boxing is not only a sport of it's not this, you need to be technically flawless to win. It's never been that way. And you often hear modern guys who say, hey, well, the sport's advanced, we've evolved, shit like that. Okay, then why the hell are guys like Ricardo Mayorga still beating guys like Vernon Forrest, and why will they always beat them? It happens all the time. There are always raw guys like that. And again, Gavilan was not Ricardo Mayorga. That's not what I'm trying to say. But what I'm saying is there are guys who are raw and look maybe unskilled to the untrained eye, who are always beating these guys who have a lot of talent. I mean, look at Marcos Maidana versus Adrian Broner. Maidana was a bit more wild. I mean, he got tighter when he got with Robert Garcia. But that's my point, is this boxing is far more complex than something like sprinting where you're just running in a straight line. That's why Gavilan and so many other guys throughout history who were spoilers and had styles like that could win championships of the world. But yeah, Gavilan was one of those guys, and he was famous for the bolo punch as well. He would throw that winding uppercut and connect. But I mean, yeah, how hard would it be to fight a guy who's constantly coming at you, constantly throwing punches, and he can't stop him?
All right, so you guys, you were just privy to like one of me and Jeremiah's hour-long conversations we have almost daily. We ought to start
thank us later.
Conversations. They're pretty much the same thing.
Well, the fans, can you thank us by rating and commenting and subscribing and all that stuff, sharing? Thank you.
Or you
appreciate
can go to the PayPal button on the grillingtruth.com and click that and just give us $1, just for fun. But all right,
treat me like a stripper.
Real quick, you dirty boy. All right, but real quick, let's wrap this up with Vergil Ortiz, who clubbed Orozco half to death. I think Ortiz is the real deal, and I don't mean by impregnating 9 different women. I'm talking this dude can fight, he can finish. I think this guy could be something special before all's said and done, Jeremiah.
Maybe. I mean, I'm not on the bandwagon yet, but the kid is coming along.
That I say maybe. What the hell?
Yeah, no, but he's coming along nicely. And the fact that he's a welterweight now, I like it because it means that we've got somebody to look forward to in the future. If Errol Spence and Terrence Crawford should be there in the future. I don't see Crawford getting that much bigger, but who knows? You never know with these guys. They might jump to 154 and stay there.
Raimondo asked, this was a good win for Ortiz. Do you think it's a little early to put him in against someone like Ugas?
Yes, I think it's a little early to put him in against somebody like Ugas, but I think
maybe Luis Collazo. How about that?
I think Collazo, but another guy I think would be interesting because he's been a damn good gatekeeper, and that's Ray Robinson, the new Ray Robinson, because Kavyaulauskas struggled with him. Who else? Josh Kelly struggled with him. Those were 2 prospects. So I would like to see him against Ray Robinson right now. I think that would be a good test. We know where he's at. Robinson's got good size. He's crafty. I think that's who I would aim at if I was Ortiz's people. But what I got to say, first off, thanks for the comment. Secondly, this kid's coming along nicely. I mean, the rate at which he's progressed so far is impressive, and he's just got about everything too. I mean, he's got good power, technique. I love the uppercut he landed on Orozco. I love to see guys throw that stuff, body punch and all that. The kid looks really good, but 147 has always been a real tough division, so we'll see.
All right, Alberto says, Ortiz shows promise, but he has some work to do. He swings too wild and exerted too much energy. They need to teach him how to pace himself. He can get away with that right now fighting this caliber of fighter, but once he steps up, he's going to have to rely more on his skills.
Yeah, agree. And this is the thing about, a lot of us kind of there are a lot of people who get ahead of themselves and like, yeah, he's going to dominate the division. We've seen that with tons of guys where they're like, oh yeah, he is special. He is going to do that. I mean, hell, look at Adrian Broner. The Ring Magazine had him number 5 pound for pound. And this was after he beat, who's the white guy? Like the white guy that wasn't that good at 135? The British guy. Anyways, the Ring Magazine.
Scotty Olsen?
Nah.
No, Olsen's smaller than that. I'm thinking of the other British. There's so many British guys that are very good. Shit.
Yeah, it's like...
Sorry to all you British people. Let's see. There's a lot of Americans that aren't any good either, so I'm not trying to be a hater.
Yeah, tons of Brits that aren't that good. Hell, what was his name? No, I can find out here in just a second, I'm sure.
Hell. Well, are we done now?
Yeah, we're done. Anyways, I just want to say that that's one of those pivotal moments. It's like, can he adapt and, calm himself down and fight at a good pace? And this is a thing, too, is a lot of times we don't know until they get in the long fights, like the 12-rounders, because it's like, maybe the guy can't adjust his pace. He can't downshift, and, he burns himself out in 8 or 9 rounds, and he ends up getting stopped by somebody who's a bit better, crafty, like Collazo, who can go the distance. So we'll see, but the kid does look damn good.
All right, guys, I want to remind you to go check out our Facebook page, too. Go like it, because you should, because there's a lot of boxing on there. You get to watch Ali Chivalo 2 this past weekend. What else we have? We had Lennox Lewis against Vitali Klitschko. You can still see all these fights on there. There's probably 30 or 40 fights at least on there, including some of the old guys that we talked about. So make sure you check out the Facebook page. Make sure you go like @GrillingTruth. If you have any comments for the show for tomorrow night or something you'd like to hear us talk about, make sure you go to @GrillingTruth, comment there. Jeremiah, anything you want to add before we wrap it up?
No, I just want to say that it's kind of good to be back after a little vacation, and I'm excited to get this thing going. We might have the weekly show tomorrow, so stay tuned for that. And again, if you guys can just help us out with a thumbs up or a follow or whatever it is, and keep sending us comments. We really do appreciate it, good or bad.
All right, guys. I want to remind you to make sure you go to betnow.eu, our presenting sponsor, to get a 50% cashback bonus on your first deposit up to $1,000. Make sure you use the promo code TRUTH50. Also, definitely go check out our friends at the Retired Boxers Foundation. Jackie Richardson and Alex Ramos do great work there. You can find them on Facebook. And tomorrow, 1 o'clock Eastern Time, me and Steve Risley will be back with Survive in Advance. So make sure you check us out live there at thegrillytruth.com. All right, we're going to wrap it up. You can hear all of our shows on iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, Spreaker, Stitcher, Spotify, YouTube, and about 200 other places. So basically anywhere you can find a podcast, you'll find The Grueling Truth. So for Jeremiah Preisser, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.